All right. All right, guys. So now we're recording. So sorry. So yeah, I was just going over basic concepts and principles. We're going to talk about the philosophical assumptions, which are the underlying philosophical assumptions of the science of behavior analysis: selectionism, determinism, parsimony, pragmatism. And then we'll go into B2, which is going to go into defining the concepts and principles. So this is all going to be really fun stuff. Who can tell me what we talked about last week? It's one of the characteristics of ABA. So in order for it to be conceptually systematic, the intervention has to be derived on the basic principles of behavior, right? In the second edition, I don't know. I have the second edition, but it's at work, so I wouldn't be able to tell you what page we are on. Oh, somebody answered it. 26. I'm on 25 in the third edition. So I basically gave you guys the answer, right? So for behavior intervention to be conceptually systematic, it has to be derived from the basic behavior principles. So that's what we're going to go over today. We're going to go over the basic behavioral principles. And I'm going to read just the very first paragraph of page 26 to you guys. I had this moment when I read it. I was like, oh my gosh, it's just a summary of what the chapter is about to be about. But now that I understand all of this, I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. So this chapter defines the basic concepts required for a scientific analysis of behavior and introduces fundamental principles discovered by such analysis. Behavior, the first concept we examine, is the most fundamental of all because the controlling variables of primary importance to applied behavior analysts are located in the environment. The concepts of environment and stimulus are defined next. We then introduce several essential findings that the scientific study of behavior, environment relations has discovered. Two types of behavior: respondent and operant. So we're going to go into the differences between respondent and operant behavior are described and the basic ways the environment influences each type. So we're going to learn about how the environment influences respondent behavior or operant behavior. Respondent conditioning and operant conditioning are then introduced. The three-term contingency, a concept for expressing temporal and functional relations. You guys may or may not see those words a lot on the exam. So temporal and functional relations. So in ABA, we study the temporal and functional relations to figure out its effect on behavior. Because remember, we we learned in determinism that nothing ever happens for no reason. So there's some type of temporal or functional relation that is having an effect on this behavior. And so when I read that, I was like, oh, mind blown. So temporal and functional relations. So the A and the C, the antecedent and the consequence, are having some type of effect on the behavior. And we'll go over later what temporal and functional are, but just know that those are very important. Respondent and operant, very important. Temporal and functional relations, very important. Between operant behavior and the environment and its importance as a focal point in applied behavior analysis are then explained. The chapter's final section recognizes the enormous complexity of human behavior, reminds us that behavior analysts possess an incomplete, though ever expanding, progressively sophisticated knowledge on their subject matter, and identifies some of the obstacles and challenges faced by those who strive to change behavior in applied settings. So that's basically summing up what we're about to go over, and then it's going to go deep into behavior, environment, response class, all of the basic fundamental parts of ABA. So if you guys don't understand this chapter, it's hard for you to understand anything else. So this is where all of the important content starts to come in. So who can define in their own words, tell me what exactly is behavior? We kind of already talked about it last week.
Interaction with your environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
So here in the book, it says behavior is the activity of living organisms. Human behavior is everything people do, including how they move, what they say, think, and feel. Tearing open a bag of peanuts is behavior, and so is thinking how good the peanuts will taste once the bag is open. Reading this sentence is behavior, and if you're holding the book, so is feeling it, feeling its weight and shape in your hands. So I had somebody tell me one time, oh, it's because I was born with anxiety. Do you guys think that somebody can be born with anxiety?
No.
No, because we're behavior analysts, right? And anxiety is basically like an internal, very vague statement. So like, what is anxiety? What does anxiety look like? So I don't accept the fact that you just told me that you were born with anxiety. No, you were not born with anxiety. Something, some type of contingency that you have previously encountered within your environment. So some type of contingency, antecedent, consequence, whatever, has affected your behavior in a certain way. So now every time, remember I told you guys last time, so let's say you get into a car wreck. You get into a car wreck, and now every time you go in that intersection, you get all sweaty and nervous and you tense up. Why do I engage in that behavior? I engage in that behavior because I was conditioned to do so, because I have a previous learned history that, hey, whenever you get to that intersection, you may or may not total your car. Anybody have anything to add? Behavior is any action that is observable, measurable. Perfect. Observable, measurable. We have to be able to see it. No situation causes people to feel that way. Yeah, exactly. So Eva said that situations cause people to feel that way. So maybe you have been in a high stress situation, like you were in the war. And so now you have like some type of anxious feeling whenever you hear fireworks or something like that. So all of these feelings or behaviors are learned. in some way, we've encountered some type of consequence or some type of antecedent to make us feel or react in this certain way. Yes, so she says people can have more of a propensity to have anxiety due to a mental illness or chemicals in the brain. Yeah, but that would be like getting into the psychology aspect of that. And so we would have to hand that off to a specialist, right? Because we can only go within our scope. So we can only say what we can observe and what we can measure. So based off of my observation, maybe that's why you feel like that in this intersection or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I thought that would be fun to talk about because nobody's ever like born with anxiety. It may just be something that occurred based off of some type of environmental factors that influence that behavior. Okay. So next.
I have a question. What
Yeah.
form of mentalism would that be? Would that be like a hypothetical construct or explanatory fiction or another one? Am I on the right track?
Mentalism, yes. So that would be mental. You mean
Saying I was born anxious or with anxiety. Saying that.
yeah,
What
that
would
would
that fall under?
so that would be mentalism, but I would have to like review and tell you exactly which one it would fall under. But yes, definitely. So like if your supervisor heard you talking like that, she would probably redirect you like, hey, maybe say it in a more behavioral way or something like that. And Alex says Cooper does recognize internal, but we focus on external behaviors. Yes, of course, we do. We talked about it, right? Radical behaviorism, where they're starting to be like, hey, actually, private events and all of that do contribute to behaviors. Okay, so it went on to talk about response. So who can tell me how we remember response?
Single instance of behavior.
Yeah, response is a single specific instance of a behavior.
So a clap versus clapping. Right?
Yeah, so any action of the response refers to a specific instance of behavior, and then a response topography refers to the physical shape or form of the behavior. What about a response class?
More than one behavior. So saying hi, hey, hello, howdy, they would all be a part of the same response class. You're saying
It
hi,
has,
but they're all
it
in.
has the same effect on the environment. So however you pour water into a cup, it doesn't matter how it's done as long as the water's poured in, but however you do it would be part of that response class.
Yes, perfect. So it refers to a group of responses of varying topography. Topography is a good word. Who could tell me what topography is?
What the behavior
How
looks
something look like.
What the behavior looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, so what it looks like. So it's a group of responses. So it's a group of single instances of a behavior, but they all vary in topography. So what you guys are saying, they all vary, like, hi, howdy, how are you? Just a wave, just a head nod, a what's up. So those are all single instances of behavior varying in topography that are going to produce the same effect on the environment. So they're all going to get the same response, like all going to get the same reaction. The other person is going to say hello back to you.
Maybe not.
Or maybe not. Yeah, if they don't want to. We're not going to force them. What about repertoire?
What's in your whole learning and your environment, your own learning abilities?
Yeah, so the way that I think about it or explain it, it's like it's your toolbox. So what tools do you have in your toolbox? What is your repertoire, your skill set? Yeah, perfect. Erica said skill set. What is that example that I posted on the group that they put in the book that was so cute? It's in here in the book. After studying this text, your repertoire of knowledge and skills and applied behavior analysis will be advanced. So you'll have more of the tools in your toolbox. So now you know what behavior is. Now you know what response is. Now you know what topography is, response class. So you're adding more skills into your toolbox. And so now those terms or those concepts are in your repertoire. And so it's just makes you look really good as a BCBA to like explain it to the RBTs or to the parents, like, oh, we're adding more skills to her verbal repertoire. So now instead of just manding using her PECS board, now she can also tact. She can tell you, I see, I want, I hear. She has all of these new skills in her repertoire, in her verbal behavior repertoire. So that's a good behavioral word for you guys. Okay, and then it goes on to talk about environment. In ABA, environment is so important to us. So environment is the physical setting and circumstance in which the organism or reference part of the organism exists. Anybody want to go into environment and what's so cool about environment?
Environment, isn't that the physical world around us?
Yeah, the physical world around you.
I'd say that it's also because it's the thing that we can change the most. Like that's where we focus our efforts on changing first is environment.
Yeah, perfect. It's kind of like your EO and AO, right? Like you're contriving motivation by either satiating or what's the opposite word?
Deprivation.
Deprivation, yeah. So yeah, your antecedent.
Yes, the environment is always going to be where behavior occurs or takes place. Always. Because behavior cannot occur in a void or in a vacuum.
Yeah, perfect.
So the text says.
Nice. Quoting the text. Get whatever snacks you want. I left them out there for you. Sorry, I left them like a whole bowl of snacks and I told them not to bother me. They're like, which ones are mine? Like, I don't know. Get whichever one.
Same. I tell my kids noodle night.
Yeah, right? Or I'll just bring Chick-fil-A or something. Okay, stimulus. What is a stimulus?
An object, person, place, or thing in the environment, in anything in the environment that
in the book, it says an energy change that affects an organism through its receptor cells.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. A stimulus is anything in the environment that affects an organism.
Or anything that a person can experience through their senses.
Yep, it goes into the exteroceptors.
So that's like sight, taste, smell, hearing, touch.
Yep, vision, hearing, olfaction, taste, touch. What about the introceptors? You guys are gonna have to know the different so the exteroceptors are the outside. The interoceptors,
There's like organs, feelings, and stuff like that on the inside
Yeah.
of the body.
feeling your stomach ache, and a proprioceptor is the movement and balance, the vestibular senses. So just know the 3 different types. And applied behavior analysts most often study the effects of stimulus changes that occur outside of the body. External stimulus conditions and events are not only more accessible to observation and manipulation than our internal conditions, but are also key features of the physical and social world in which people live.
I do have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So I had the new 5th edition. They got rid of the receptors, that part of the stimuli classes. I just took it. I felt with pride for a time. And none of those questions had that. They were more focused on the formal, functional, temporal. Nothing with that, because I do remember the 4th edition did focus on that. But I don't know if the 5th edition, they're focusing on that part of B. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm saying based on the exam that I took. Maybe that wasn't there and I don't remember.
Yeah, well, all of the exams are different. So like maybe you didn't get it that time, maybe you'll get it now. But it is in the 3rd edition book. So I would just know them, maybe not go so deep into it. Just know what a stimulus is and what all the different ones are that can affect your behavior. And I think you should be fine. So like what I was telling somebody else is like, you can study these terms all day long, but if you don't know how to explain them in an applied setting, it's going to be really hard. So just know what they are, but don't get too deep into it. Just know that a stimulus is some type of environmental change or some type of signal that affects the behavior. So we can even get more like into a stimulus, like an SD and S delta, but I don't think it's gonna talk about that in this chapter. But they are gonna go into what you're talking about with the formal, the temporal. I do remember that those are really important, is knowing the difference between formal and temporal. And there's one more, isn't there?
Locus.
It was arbitrary. I can never pronounce that. The arbitrator. Yeah.
Locus.
Locus.
Yeah.
Yep.
Locus. Thank you. I couldn't remember that at all. Locus. Okay.
Well, it's temporal locus and temporal extent. Extent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Like-
different thing. One is how long, kind of like duration, and the point it happens in time.
Yes.
And the other one
Yes.
is the point it happens in time.
Yes, that's right. I think temporal extent is duration and temporal
Mhm.
locus is where it happens in time.
Pinpoint exacted in time, exact place in time.
Yep. And so next in chapter 28, they go on to talk about classifying and describing stimuli. So stimulus events can be described formally by their physical features, temporally by when they occur with respect to behavior of interest, and functionally. So those are the 3 that you guys are going to have to know now. So it's formal, temporal, and functional. Those are the 3. that you're gonna have to know now in the 5th edition.
And this one, I could never pronounce this. I don't know if you can see it. This one right here.
What does it say? Arbitrary?
Yes.
Arbitrary
Please
what?
review
Stimulus
that.
class?
What does that one fall under?
That is in the stimulus classes. It says stimuli evoke the same response, but do not physical look alike. So I believe that's the one that says pear, bananas. And they give an example like, but what is this class? What type of what stimulus class this is part of? So they
Oh,
will,
yes.
you know what
Yes.
I'm talking about? They
Yeah.
it's part of the fruit class, but they don't look alike.
Yes. So
Yeah, that one is very important.
that's for concept formation within the stimulus classes. It's separating them into feature or arbitrary,
Yes.
right? Yes.
Right. So arbitrary falls under which one? Is it formal?
Yeah, because it's more about how it looks. They all can
Right?
look different.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's
But then
only,
it confuse. Oh, sorry.
there's only 3 main categories: formal, temporal, and functional. And then arbitrary falls under one of the 3 main, which is
I believe it's
formal.
formal.
I think
Yeah.
it might be functional. I don't know. In my notes, I have it under functional.
Okay. Oh, you
But let's read it. Let's read it so we don't tell any lies. So formal dimensions of stimuli. Behavior analysts often describe, measure, and manipulate stimuli according to their formal dimensions, such as size, color, intensity, weight, and spatial position relative to other objects. Stimuli can be non-social, example, red light, a high-pitched sound, or socially mediated by a friend asking, want more peanuts. So for formal, we're putting them in categories based off of their physical features, their shape, their size, their color, preposition. So formal is going to be what it looks like on the outside.
Yes, yes.
So what I always think of, like when I took my exam, because I kind of forgot what all of these things were. Do you guys know what LRFFC is?
Yeah,
No.
So,
it's a listener responder based on function, feature, and class.
yeah, so once you guys become BCBAs, you're gonna start to target, it's a more advanced skill, but it's called LRFFC. So LRFFC is we're teaching them how to put things together in categories based off of their feature, their function, and their class. So feature would be like, which one has spots? And then they pick the cheetah. Which one is big? Which one is a big animal? Then they pick the elephant in a field of 10. So that's me running an LRFFC trial, but I'm first, you want to teach them how to put things in each category, how to learn things in each category. So feature, I'm going to teach them how to match things based off of their features. So what it looks like. So when I took the exam, whenever I saw anything about like formal, to me, I always thought about feature. So, okay, how does it look? What does it look like? And so that way they can match based off of their feature. Yeah, Catherine said formal is physical feature, temporal is time, and functional is effect of stimulus on behavior. Yep. And so next we go into temporal. And so it is, it has to do where the behavior occurred in time. So I always think of breaking it down into A, B, and C. So when did they occur? Time, tiempo, antecedents, consequence. So where it occurred in time. So are you looking at the antecedent? Are you looking at the behavior? Or are you looking at the consequence? So did it occur before the behavior or did it occur after the behavior? And that's how you're going to analyze your situation or your behavior. So whenever you're thinking about temporal, think about, did it happen before the behavior or did it happen after the behavior? So think about ABC when you think about temporal, so where it occurred in time. And then you have functional. So who can tell me more about putting something in a stimulus class based off of its functional?
Functional. A cup.
Did somebody say something?
I was gonna say like can a vehicle be like a function, like a car, something that you drive? Does it mean like function, or a vehicle, or like functional class?
Yeah, so I always think about function. I try to bring it back to like ABA. So like, okay, I'm gonna try to categorize this behavior based off of its function. So what are the 4 functions? We know that at least. So when I'm taking the test, I always like try to bring it back to ABA. Before I even answer the question, I'm like, okay, what is functional? Functional is, it has to have some type of functional relation, and I can put it into some type of category of why this behavior is occurring. So is it for escape? Is it for attention? So what is the function? Why is this behavior occurring? So that's how I remembered functional, is like putting them in some type of category based off of like the why, or like what caused this to occur. Somebody said the effect of a stimulus on a behavior. Yeah, perfect. I like that one. I like that example, Alex. Anybody else have a better example to explain functional?
The way I see it is like it's a single stimulus can have multiple function, like the buzz on your phone versus the buzz on your computer dying. So it's the same. It has the same. You might have the single stimulus. You could have the same behavior. Oh, my phone is dying, or my phone is dying. It's the same behavior, correct? Or will have the same stimulus.
Yes. So another example would be, so the Pandora on my TV, the Pandora on my phone, the Pandora on my stereo, the Pandora on my wireless headphones, like they all serve the same function of providing me with music that I like to listen to, right? But they're all topographically different formally.
Yeah, so they all serve the same function, but they all look different, right? Is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, I like that. What other examples can we think of that serves the same function?
So would that be a,
Oh, what about all of the different drinks everybody is drinking, right? Like somebody is drinking, somebody said they were drinking wine, somebody said they were drinking water. And I don't know, what is that, Amber?
LaCroix.
Ooh, okay. Sparkling water. She's got a LaCroix. So it all, I guess, serves the same function to quench your thirst, even though the alcohol is probably going to make you more thirsty eventually. But you get what I'm saying. Like they're all drinks and they're all serving the same function to quench or satisfy some type of internal need, which is we're thirsty.
And they all look different.
Yeah, and they all look different, but they're all serving the same purpose.
So you are right. Arbitrary class would fall under functional. So that is correct, right? So arbitrary is when they all look different but serve the same function, right?
Yeah, so
Is that right?
arbitrary is when they don't share the same features, but they evoke the same response. So like we were saying about the Pandora sign, or somebody's talking about the cross guard telling you to go, or a walk sign, or the little person walking. They're all serving the same function. It's telling you to go. So they all serve the same function, but they all look different. So yes, we can put arbitrary with functional, if that's how your brain works. And then you can put feature with formal. So feature means that they share some type of common topography.
Yes. And I was thinking another example, me and one of my friends was thinking about it, like a red stoplight, a red stop sign, the red lights on the back of someone's car when they're stopping, like they all serve the same function to tell you to stop, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but they all, and some of them look different and some of them look the same.
Yeah, I like that. See, this is helpful. We're all like giving examples, and then everybody's like having a different like clicking moment where you're like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense.
I have a
Yeah,
question.
definitely.
Yes, Nancy.
It's me, Stephanie.
Oh, Stephanie, sorry, they both went yellow at the same time.
Oh, it's okay. So like if a child is hitting the table and screaming to like escape a task, would that be arbitrary or off track?
I guess you can think about it like that. So like he's screaming and what was the other one? Banging the table for escape.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah, if they both get him escape,
yeah,
then yes,
exactly.
he can categorize them together. And guess what? Now it's going to become a conditioned response, right? So now he knows I can either bang on this table or scream really loud, and I'm going to get access to escape. So yeah, it's kind of the same way. I like to think about it like that too. I like to always bring back the clinical part and be like, okay, how can I apply this without trying to memorize what formal, temporal, and functional? How can I bring it back to the clinic or back to my applied setting? Because that's where the test goes. So you want to make sure that your brain can also form those derived relations. You like that? You like how I threw that ABA term in there?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Arbitrary looks different in topography, but has the same function. Yes. So do not share features, but evoke same response. And then feature is they all have the common topography. So like an example could be like all of the different types of cats in the world. That was probably not a good example because I'm not really fluent in cats. It's not in my repertoire, but like all of the different cats, they all look different, but they're all still cats. They'll all meow and lick themselves or do whatever. But yeah, so that is the different stimulus classes that you guys will need to know: formal, temporal, and functional. And then putting them into like concept formation, which would be feature and arbitrary. Feature means they all have a common topography. Arbitrary means that they don't have the same features, but they evoke the same response. I feel like that was good. We did pretty good on that. What is next? environment, stimuli in their classes. Okay, so now it's going to go to respondent behavior and respondent conditioning. This is where it gets fun and confusing for a lot of people. And respondent extinction. So you're like, dang, like there's so many different types. It like overwhelm you sometimes. But just know them because they're very important in ABA. They're your foundations. So who can tell me something, one of the like main differences between respondent and operant behavior?
Respondent is reflexes. You're born with these behaviors, and operant, you learn these behaviors through the consequences that you have in interactions with your environment.
Yes,
Phylogeny and ontogeny.
yes, I love that.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Perfectly said Erica. So what was that, Matt?
What?
Did he say something?
No.
$7? No, I got 5 from this. Oh, that's your $7.
$7. Okay. Yeah, so perfect. Respondent is a reflex and operant is learned. That was great. Great example. Okay. So it goes in to tell us about reflex equals respondent. So we got that. So respondent are things, all biologically intact organisms enter the world able to respond in predictable ways to certain stimuli. No learning required. So remember, for respondent, no learning required. So some good examples that Cooper gives us is ready-made behaviors protect against harmful stimuli, such as eyes watering and blinking to remove particles in the cornea, help regulate the internal balance and economy of an organism, changes in heart rate and respiration in response to changes in temperature and activity levels, and promote reproduction, such as sexual arousal. Each of these response relations are reflex, is part of the organism's genetic endowment. So when you think of respondent, think of reflex and genetic endowment. So these are things that you were born with. Nobody taught you that you needed to blink when you go outside and the light is shining bright in your eyes and you just start blinking in and your eyes are all watering, or
No one taught you to cough.
yeah, no one taught you to cough. Or like I have this weird behavior that every time I go outside, I live in Texas and the heat and the sun is just like so scorching in your face. Every time I go outside in the sun, I sneeze. And I don't know why, like nobody taught me to do that. It's just like something that happens within my body. If somebody can tell me why, that would be great.
It's actually a medical condition.
It's a medical condition?
Yeah, my
What?
boyfriend has the same issue. Every time he goes out and looks at the sun, he will start sneezing nonstop.
Yeah, it's like 6 of them back to back. Oh my God, somebody said, yes, my son has it. Oh my God, that's so freaky. I didn't know it was a medical condition.
Oh no, it's a thing. It's actually
Wow,
a thing.
that's so crazy. Well, yeah, I was born with it, I guess, because nobody taught me to do that. I remember like since I was a kid, that would happen to me. Like I go outside and I just start like sneezing uncontrollably. And like when I will go to get my eyebrows waxed, it happens there too. Like when you're like under the light, I just like my eyes will start watering and I start sneezing like crazy. So embarrassing. But yeah, so that's a respondent behavior, some type of reflex that's part of their genetic, I don't know, genetic construct. Respondent behavior is a behavior that is elicited. Woo! Elicit. So remember elicit when you guys think of respondent, right?
An
So-
operant evoked.
Yeah, exactly. Did somebody Google it? They said photic sneeze reflex. Oh my gosh. Wow. See, it was a reflex. I wasn't taught that. It just happened.
I'm sorry. I got a little confused. Which one did we just go over? Respondent? Which one?
We went over
Condition?
respondent, which is
Right now we're respondent behavior, and we're just talking about
Okay.
how it has to do with reflex. It's unlearned.
I'm just making sure I'm following correctly. I have been taking notes. I just wasn't sure if I got lost or not.
No,
Thank you,
you're
sorry.
good. Respondent behavior is a reflex that is elicited and it's unlearned, is pretty much what you'll want to write down. Because elicit, you'll see that word a lot, and you'll just have to remember, okay, which one is elicit? Elicited. Was it the respondent or was it the operant? So yes, respondent is elicited by some type of antecedent. So I went outside and saw the sun. I started sneezing uncontrollably. So that behavior was elicited by me stepping outside into the sun. I can't believe that that's a disorder. Okay, so also with respondent behavior, you also want to remember habituation. So respondent behavior is induced or brought out. So it's elicited by a stimulus that precedes the behavior. Nothing else is required for the response to occur. For example, the bright light in Selena's eyes will elicit her to sneeze. If relevant body parts are intact, it will occur every time. However, if the eliciting stimulus is presented repeatedly over a short span of time, the strength or magnitude of the response will diminish. And in some cases, the response may not occur at all. This process of gradually diminishing response strength is known as habituation. So basically what you're saying is if somebody, I don't know, tied me to a tree outside and I'm like out there like sneezing uncontrollably, after a while, hopefully habituation will occur and I will no longer produce that response. So that is habituation. So you're just exposed to it over and over and over and over and over.
It's kind of like somebody jump scaring you. You're gonna get scared the first time, and then after a while, you're gonna get so used to it, you're no longer gonna respond to the jump scare.
Yeah, perfect. Anybody
would
else?
that be like someone not being allergic to a cat, but like say you were around cats and you sneezed a lot, and then but it was your sister, so you were always over there, so like by the time it was your 5th visit, you were sneezing like 75% less, and then by your 10th visit it was like 5%.
Yeah,
like you becoming used to something?
Yeah, that's a good example.
Okay, thank you.
I have an example. So for me, I had a client that used to drool. So every time when I started working with him, when he starts drooling, I want to vomit. Like it just after a while, I just got used to his drooling, so it doesn't really affect me anymore.
Yeah,
wow, kudos to you.
That's a good example. So she's saying that drool used to elicit the response of her needing to vomit. But after a while, she worked with this client for so long that she just got used to it. And now she doesn't feel the need to vomit.
Yeah, that's a good.
Perfect. I love that example. Okay, so then it goes on to talk about respondent conditioning. So respondent conditioning, formally neutral stimuli can acquire the ability to elicit respondents through a learning process called respondent conditioning. This is also called Pavlovian conditioning and classical conditioning. So whenever you guys are thinking about respondent conditioning, think about classical conditioning and Pavlov and the dog. So who can tell me about Pavlov and his dog experiment and what he did to elicit a response.
So it kind of happened by accident with Pavlov. He was kind of, I think he was into a different field, and he started pairing a bell with dogs and their food. So he would ring the bell, present the food, and then the dog would eat. So eventually the bell became a signal itself for dogs to salivate because they knew food was coming.
Yeah, perfect, Michelle. So he started eliciting the response of salivation by pairing the bell with the steak or something, right? It was
Yeah,
like
with the presentation of the dog food or some kind of high preferred food for them.
yes, and you guys, this skill is so amazing. Once you get into the clinic setting, everybody tries to be so complex in their programming and their interventions, and they're like, oh, let's do this and this and this and this and that and X, Y, and Z. And sometimes all you need to do is go back to the basics. All you have to do is go back to classical conditioning. So like, oh, my client is unmotivated. He does not like anything. I'm like, oh, really? He doesn't like anything? They're like, no, all he wants to do is bounce this ball all day long. Okay, well, he likes something. So now what? Now we're gonna go all the way back in time to the basics of ABA, and we're gonna use classical conditioning. We're going to use what we call stimulus-stimulus pairing, and we're gonna help him to be motivated by other things. So maybe we're gonna start presenting the ball with a train. So every time he's bouncing the ball, we're like, choo-choo, playing with the train. So ball, train, ball, train, ball, train. And then guess what happens when you remove the ball?
He wants to play with the train.
Train becomes equally as reinforcing as ball, because we went all the way back to basics and we just used classical conditioning. We use stimulus-stimulus pairing to increase motivation for the train by pairing it with the ball using classical conditioning. And so I get like so excited. I'm like, oh my God, classical conditioning. But nobody ever really thinks about those things. If you need a laugh, especially fans of The Office, Google Office classical conditioning. Oh yeah, that's a good one. It's so cool. It's so cool to see how you can elicit any response by just conditioning, by pairing it with something. So like your dogs, when you open the bag of dog food or they hear the crinkle of the dog food, right? They like come running out of nowhere. So that behavior was conditioned. Or your dog, I don't know, I might be getting too deep into it. But that's basically what it is. It's going back to basics and using that stimulus pairing. And it's super, super cool. So he would present the steak and the bell, steak, bell, steak, bell, dog would salivate. So after a while, he would remove the steak and only present the bell, and the dog would salivate.
Here, buddy, stay here. Kiss mom.
Okay. So
Want me to drive you?
No, I'm going to CVS.
We can do one more if you guys want, and then we can call it a day. So we can go into the Pavlov example. So he started a metronome just an instant before feeding the dogs. So prior to being exposed to the stimulus pairing procedure, food in the mouth, and an unconditioned stimulus, so a US, elicited salivation, but the sound of the metronome, which was a neutral stimulus, did not. After several trials, consisting of the sound of the metronome followed by the presentation of food, the dogs began salivating in response to the sound of the metronome. The metronome had thus become a conditioned stimulus, and a conditioned reflex was established. Respondent conditioning is most effective when the neutral stimulus is presented just before or simultaneously with the unconditioned stimulus. However, some conditioning effects can sometimes be achieved with considerable delay between the onset of the neutral stimulus and the onset of the unconditioned stimulus, and even with backwards conditioning in which the unconditioned precedes the neutral stimulus. Before we go, I'm going to give you guys an example of what I did like my final project on in grad school. And maybe you guys will appreciate it, and it'll help you to remember stimulus-stimulus pairing. So I studied stimulus-stimulus pairing used to increase spontaneous language in non-verbal clients, or like in babies, right? And so what we do is we use stimulus-stimulus pairing to increase spontaneous vocalization. And I'm going to tell you guys how really quickly, and then we can go. But so what you do, it's super, super cool. What you'll do is you will, it's non-contingent. It's not contingent on them saying anything or them making a sound, right? So I'm trying to increase the amount of sounds that this client makes. So let's say he's a baby, right? And I really want to increase his sounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some stimulus-stimulus pairing trials with little baby. And so what you're going to do is you're going to, let's say bubbles. Baby is highly motivated by bubbles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a timer, or first let's take him to baseline. So first I'm going to sit there and I'm going to watch him on baseline, and I'm going to see how many spontaneous vocals this baby will emit in a day. And so I take data, baby emitted 20 vocals today. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now I'm going to introduce my intervention, which is going to be the stimulus-stimulus pairing procedure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find something that motivates the baby, and it's bubbles. Let's say, for example, bubbles. Okay, so I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes, and I'm going to collect data in those 5 minutes, but I'm going to be providing him with bubbles non-contingently, but I'm going to be saying something. I'm going to be pairing it with a sound. So I'm going to be waving the bubbles, and I'm going to be saying, ba, ba, ba. And then I'm going to do it again. Waves the bubbles. Ba, ba, ba. Waves bubbles again. Ba, ba, ba. And throughout those 5 minutes, I'm going to be collecting data on however many times little baby makes a sound. It doesn't even have to be ba. He just has to say something. And it's really cool because you start to see them, like when they're just playing by themselves, they're just like ba, ba, ba. And so they're starting to emit those sounds because you paired it with their most highly preferred reinforcer. And so it's just so, so amazing to see such a basic fundamental concept work like that to increase language. Amber has a little baby. She's going to use the trick. I see her over there. Blowing kisses. Okay, well, I'll leave you guys on that note on stimulus pairing.
Sorry, I have a question. So
Okay.
with your example, what would be the NS and the US?
Okay, so for my example,
With the neutral stimulus, that would be would that be saying ba or waving the bubbles?
so the unconditioned stimulus is going to be the bubbles,
Okay.
eliciting salivation, but the sound of the neutral. That's a really good question. Can somebody else answer it?
Because
Can you repeat the question?
So
Okay,
she's
so-
saying which one is the neutral stimulus and which one is the unconditioned stimulus. So the unconditioned, the neutral stimulus is the bubbles.
Neutral
And
stimuli.
the unconditioned stimulus is the vocalization.
Okay.
So that one was unconditioned, but eventually when he's playing by himself, I'm not even showing him bubbles anymore. He's just playing and he's like, ba, ba, ba,
Gotcha. Okay.
ba, ba, ba.
Okay.
So that's,
Yes.
I got it. I got
Yes.
you, girl.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay,
me-
got it. So
Let me stop recording.